Hello everyone, we're starting another video here. It's the third part in the series of working on this Richard Bütz project. This time we're going to be working on making the second arm. I carved one arm off video, and now we're moving on to the second arm. This is a blank that we cut out earlier. Basically we're just going to use the first one as a model and try to match that as close as we can. And you can see here that I've decided to make this a little different here. The shape of the hand with an open hand. The original drawings had them using a closed hand, a closed fist, and it was just kind of putting their index finger and thumb up against the bottom edge of the canoe. And I just felt that having an open hand there would look a little more realistic, like how you'd have your hands wrapped around the edge of the canoe. So we're just going to start in here and start getting this work down to the shape that we have drawn out there. One thing I'll say is the plan's called to have this on a 3/8 inch thick piece of wood, and that's what I did. After having the arms done and on, I think it would work out better to make them a little bit thicker. I kind of feel that the arms, the way they ended up, they're a little too thin. They look kind of flat. I like the side profile of them. I think that turns out nice, but I think if I would have started with a 5/8 inch thick piece, I could have rounded, made them look a little nicer, a little more round. Just continue on through the video here, just working my way down to the line. Still using the rough out knife at this point. And you can see I have the first arm I did. Typically, when you're doing something like this, you have to you're making a second of something. I feel anyway that it's pretty important to try to match the other side, make it a pretty close duplicate. If you can see the arm that I did off camera, you get those try to carve fingers in an open hand on a small hand like that, they can become kind of delicate, and I actually cut a little bit off of the tip of the index finger on that other hand. Later on, I think I did it off camera. After noticing that, I shortened the next finger just to make it look a little better. I'm just making a mark where I want the wrist or the cuff of the sleeve to end up. Drawing in the fingers. Again, it's kind of you see a repeated process here. It's study, draw, and carve, and just kind of keep repeating that. And study my own hands throughout the video here. I study the other hand we did already, and just draw things out and take your time. See if you like the way it looks. Doing a little more studying and thinking about how your hand would be shaped if you had it wrapped around the edge of the canoe, pointing up towards the sky. And just thinking about how the hand would be curved. And we start in removing material that's not the hand. And again, when you're doing something that is this small and ends up being pretty delicate by the time you're done, you just have to be careful go slow, take little thin cuts, really think about what the grain is doing, and it's, you know, unlike larger pieces or the beginning of a carving. If you're carving and you accidentally go the wrong way with the grain and you break off a chunk, it's you can kind of say, oh yeah, I got to go this way, and then smooth it out. If you're working on something this small, you really don't have that opportunity. You get it wrong, and then it's kind of start over time. So I just take my time. Working on the inside of the hand. Trying to define the wrist a little bit. I don't carve the thumbs completely on this. I didn't on the first one. I won't on this one. It's just they would most likely just break off anyway as I was trying to fit it to the canoe. So I just kind of started where the thumb would be and then called that good enough. Here I'm using a V tool to start defining the fingers a little bit. And then we'll do a little more studying, careful thinking here, taking our time. I'm going to study my hand, look how it is, kind of the natural curve, or what it would look like if you imagine the canoe setting in my hand there. I want the fingers to kind of come up and press against the outside of the canoe. And one thing I realized, in this little bit of studying and going back, after I had used the V tool and divided the fingers, or started to divide the fingers, I remembered I need to have more curve to the hand. So just kind of remark things here. And then I'll have to take some off of the outside of the hand at the top of the fingers to make the fingers curve a little bit. So I'll do that, and then come back with the V tool and start defining the fingers again. Here I'm cutting the back off. We're trying to push those fingers forward, making them curve a little bit. And just take your time. Can't stress that enough on these small parts. Come back in and redefine the fingers that the grooves I just cut off, put them back in so I don't lose where I'm at. Just kind of a time-consuming process, but you just can't rush this part. I'll divide the fingers a little bit at the top, define them a little bit, narrow the part of the hand where the fingers are. Again, doing a little comparison. How does the back of my hand look? Where's the thumb come up beside there? That's pretty good way to go about carving something, I think, is, whether you're studying a picture or a sketch you made, or your hand, parts of your body, or other objects. You just observe and copy. The more you do that, the better you get at it, trying to make that three-dimensional copy of what you're seeing. We're getting pretty, the hand's starting to be pretty well defined at this point. Kind of down to the little adjustments. More of them, there's more work to be done there. I've mentioned it in one of my other videos, and pretty soon I'll transition away from the hand itself and work on the sleeve and stuff like that. I like to move around a little bit instead of focusing too hard or stressing too much about the details in any one area. But coming up here, I'm going to leave the hand alone for a little bit. You see now how it's kind of protruding out of this square block. We'll have to start dealing with that part of it. Just trying to take a little bit more material, shape the inside of the thumb. The thumb, beginning of the thumb, like I said, I don't do the entire thumb here. I did doing the narration voiceover on this video. The time I recorded it, it's really cold outside, which means the furnace in my shop runs a lot. It makes it hard to have any decent audio, and so I just I wanted to use that time I had for the carving, and then we'll just do the voiceover later. See how that works out. And you can see, just notice the real small, careful shavings. I just jumped ahead a little bit here. Again, just doing the comparing, studying, trying to make them symmetrical. And if you notice, you can see kind of what I was mentioning earlier, but I don't believe that the arms are as thick as they should be. But for the carving that we're making, the overall scene and everything that comes together, it'll be fine. Working here trying to get that rounded shape. You can tell just the proportion of like the height of the bicep there to the width is just a little wrong. Should be a little bit wider. And I could cut the arm, like the height of the bicep and the forearm, cut those down more and make them more round, but then you compare that to the scale of the body, I don't think that would look right either. So we'll just have a little bit flatter arms than what I would think we should have. Just bringing everything down, starting to round it out. I did cut out quite a bit of the video that I had recorded, it just they get to be so long, and trying to keep the time down on them and still get the point across what I'm working on without showing every cut. Hopefully I'm doing okay in that regard. See, still got a little ways to go on the one we're working on. It's getting close, but it's still a little bit too thick. The hand's too thick, the sleeve's too thick. You can see on the one I carved off camera, you can see the dowel sticking out of the arm, inside of the arm. Part of putting this project together, we're going to have to kind of get these arms on the body and position the canoe, and we might have to adjust the arms up or down a little bit to get them to fit nice. So kind of decided that would be the best way. Just get a dowel, make a nice snug hole that they go into, and I can position them where they need to be, and then and working on the separating the fingers a little bit. It's got to be so careful with these. They can break off so easy. Just trying to get a little V cut down in between the fingers here. It's kind of hard to see, making little kind of really small swoop cuts on the side of the scoop cuts on the side of the fingers in between the knuckles. Not nothing real drastic, pretty subtle. But just again, if you study your hands, just continue to work on rounding things over. I think I ended up cutting it out towards the beginning of this video when I was roughing it, taking that block of wood and cutting down to the line. At one point I was cutting the wrong way, tried to take off a big piece, and it actually broke off the corner of the elbow. and just reattached that with some super glue, and so I could continue carving. And by the time I got the arm down to where it was, or where it needed to be, that most of that broken off piece was all carved away anyway. But you can see I took my glove off. I really recommend, and I usually do, carve with a knife or with a glove on. This piece, these arms, are really, they're kind of hard to hold on to. They're not very big, kind of slippery with those gloves on, with that glove on. And what I was finding is it was really hard to control the piece with that. So, and here I'm, one thing with that, on this stage of this small piece, my cuts are really slight, really shallow, just kind of shaving here and there and taking my time, and it's really controlled. So there's always a risk I could slip and cut, but not as much risk as if you're working on roughing out a piece and you're putting a lot of pressure on the knife and trying to take off big pieces. Just these little shaving cuts, there's not much risk of that. I think there's, it just got to be too frustrating when I was trying to hold that with the glove. It'd flip around and slip in my fingers, and it's kind of an awkward shaped small piece. Try to hold it and spin around. So it's one of the few times I'll actually carve without a glove on. And just a little bit out of frame there. We're studying the other piece, trying to make things the same. To get it close is probably good enough. It'd be hard to look at both of them at the same time. One will be on each side of the canoe. Inside of the hand a little thinner. Starting to get a hole in my thumb protector. Need to build that up a little bit more. I like to keep them not put so much on those that they get too bulky. I find that kind of gets in the way, but I do think it's important to have them. I mean, you can see that just through hitting it with a knife repeated times, you end up with a hole in it, and it's better to have it in that protective tape than it is in your finger. But I'll be putting some more. This one was a fairly new one. I start over and make new ones once in a while. I don't, after so many times adding to it, they get too big and bulky and kind of clumsy. See there, the knife is, you can see why that thumb guard stays on. Even if I take my knife off, I have that thumb guard on. And again, it's like I said before, just a repeated process of studying, comparing, trying to see what needs to be done yet. I think we're getting really close there. Realizing the shoulder's a little square yet, need to round that off. Kind of marking where to make the cuff on the sleeve. Getting about done. I think it's looking pretty good. And as it's rotating around, you can tell. I've mentioned it a couple times already. I just probably would change that in the plans. I would start with a little thicker piece of wood. Oh, wrong arm. There we go. You can see that big knot in the side of his head. That's really hoping I'll be able to paint over that a little bit. But sometimes you have that stuff and you're working with wood. Usually basswood is pretty clean and clear. Here I'm just trying to lay out so to pin it to the same relative spot on the other side. I'm going to take a 1/4 inch drill bit. Well, first I'm going to cut the piece of dowel. And I cut these, I just roll them back and forth on the knife. Sometimes it works good to put it down on the table or the desk or whatever you're working by. Put considerable pressure on it as you're rolling the dowel with your other hand, and it'll snap off. I think I did that here. Rolled it on the table a little bit, and then this is a really short piece. It was kind of hard to grab a hold of, so I could use some pliers and snap it off. But then I'll go back and I just go around and shave the sharp corner off. It just makes it easier to go in the hole if it doesn't have that sharp edge to catch on the edge. Just go around and round that over a little bit. Doesn't take much. I take a drill, 1/4 inch drill bit, and this arm isn't very thick. I was pretty nervous drilling into it. Really couldn't drill it very deep. I could probably only drill it in like 3/16 of an inch maybe. Just taking it slow. Like I said, the purpose of this is mainly just to have something to hold it in place and be able to rotate it to line it up properly with the canoe. So it doesn't have to be super strong. But I drilled in a little ways, cleaned up the edge of the hole with the knife. and just glued that little piece of dowel in there with some super glue. Well, guys, I did it again. I lost the last little bit of the video showing me putting the arms on the guy here. My SD card got full again, so anyway, I need to buy a bigger SD card, I guess. But here I'm showing that the arms are on there. I glued them on with epoxy. You can see, like I mentioned in the first video, one of the first videos on this project, that I left extra wood around the area where the arms attach. You can see here it doesn't line up perfect, but that was kind of by design. I wanted to have enough material there to carve into to kind of merge the two pieces, or the three pieces, together. So in the next video we'll show kind of cleaning that up, merging it together, cutting off the excess epoxy that's kind of around there, and we should be able to make that look pretty decent. We may have to adjust the collar a little bit, bring it all down a little bit, but we're getting pretty close. You got his arms up there. You have the canoe kind of test fit in there. It works okay. We just gotta clean it up, and we're good to go. All right, thanks.